And after the earth shattered and the buildings crumbled, the nation abandoned Gotham City. Then only the valiant, the venal, and the insane remained in the place they called No Man's Land. Welcome to Lighting the Bat Signal, a Batman fan journey. I'm your host, Anthony Desiato. Joining me to discuss Batman No Man's Land is one of the hosts of Always Hold On to Arrow, Lance Laster. Welcome to the show.
What's up? I got my tags ready.
Right on, man. I have been messaging you. I can't stress how much I loved my reread of No Man's Land. And I'm excited to compare notes and to get into it with you. I don't think you'll mind, given the show that you co-host, but I'm going to start with a Green Arrow quote, actually, if that's cool with you.
Go for it.
My favorite Green Arrow comic book story is The Archer's Quest by Brad Meltzer and Phil Hester.
Okay.
And real quick, in that story, as you well know, we have Oliver Queen going on this quest to recover the mementos of his life. And at the end of the story, I won't spoil it, but he has this line. He says, "When you're chasing something personal, you never start with what's easiest. You start with what's most important." And I read that line in that comic over 20 years ago, and that lesson stuck with me.
Yeah.
And so when I was deciding what's going to be the topic for the second episode of my new Batman podcast, I could have picked a much shorter story that would have taken me a lot less time to prep for. But like I talked about last month, this was the story that didn't get me into Batman generally, but did get me into reading Batman comics regularly. And I knew I had to start our dedicated coverage with this. So there's a lot to say. Let me toss you the ball first. What is your history with Batman No Man's Land? Like, were you reading this as it was coming out? Did you come to it later? Had you been reading the books previously? Where did this fall for you?
I came to this later. And this was at a time where I was... So I read the first time I read it was the summer before my junior year of high school. So this is about 3 or 4 years or so after this comic came out. So I got them all in graphic novel form and sat and spent a day reading them. That's what I did. And I was like, holy crap. This is excellent. And so, and again, I was kind of amassing my graphic novel collection at the time because, as you are well aware of, and all the collectors also know, especially when you're younger, there are periods of time where you are not getting books. A lot of the time it's because you are unable to do so because you do not have the funds to participate in the collecting. And so as a at that time in particular, a broke high schooler, I was like, this was like, I just wasn't really collecting stuff. I would get things here and there, but wasn't really collecting all that much. But I had the opportunity to pick up all of these. I did, and very glad that I did. And I revisited them prior to this podcast a couple of times before that, after that. It's always been a fascinating story. I've always really enjoyed it. You can make the argument it's underrated because people don't really talk about this one at all. They only talk about when people are talking about Batman stuff. They only talk about Year One, Dark Knight Returns, and The Long Halloween. Those are the three they only talk about. Recently, people have started talking about Ego, but I think that's a lot of people who are like, snobby, pretentious people trying to think that they it's like, ooh, I like this comic because it's different. And it's like, okay, people, all right, fine. But No Man's Land is excellent. It can go toe to toe with any of those other great books.
Amen. No, I totally agree. So this, of course, was the year-long 1999 storyline that ran across the core Bat titles and a number of the spin-off titles as well. And our story essentially is that earthquake-ravaged Gotham City has been cut off from the rest of the nation and declared a no man's land, all the bridges and tunnels blown up. And across that year, and it's a year of story time and a year of publishing time, you have this battle for the soul of Gotham City, and you also have more tangibly this battle for territory, because we have the gangs and the villains and Gordon's Blue Boys and the Bat Crew all carving up and vying for territory. I mentioned this in our first episode, so I'll keep it relatively brief, but it's one of those things where this storyline, it wore me down in the best way in terms of pulling me in, because I wasn't a Batman reader at the time. Wizard was covering it a lot, and I have more to say on Wizard in a moment, but I was reading about it in Wizard, and I was seeing all of these covers week after week at the comic shop, all with that very distinctive trade dress with the yellow caution tape and the red No Man's Land lettering going down the spine of each book. And no joke, it wasn't until the first issue of the final arc, Endgame, with Joker on the cover with the Batman chess pieces, where I was like, all right, I got to see what this is about. Yeah.
Interesting.
And then I went back and I was able to track down essentially all of the issues as back issues. And so I read it. That was the first time. And then I probably reread it in full within a couple of years after that. And then I didn't go back to it until 2019. I did a Patreon episode on it. And then again now. So I've only ever really read it in full a few times, but man, far and away, this was the most fun I had with it. And not that I disliked it previously. I always liked it, but I got so much more out of it now.
Yeah, honestly, it's a really engrossing story. And I think, like, being an adult and looking at it through the eyes of an adult, hits a little bit different. I don't know if you've, and for somebody who's like seen and been a part of like a natural disaster before, and some of what that life is like in the aftermath, that also kind of hits a little bit different, because it's just like, oh yeah, this is like, it's like in my experiences with it have not been as stark as something like this, but like I've seen some stuff, and the kind of powerlessness you feel when you do not have things that you're used to, when society kind of is like broken down and there's nothing really you can do until aid comes, like in whatever form it takes, like that is a different type of feeling. And so when you've experienced that, and then you read read the book and you see the stuff and you're like, oh, this is pretty accurate in a lot of ways.
100%. I mean, that was one of my core takeaways as I was rereading it, because this is the first time that I've gone back to it in a post-COVID world. And I think about what that time was like when we were all quarantined, and we have a son who's almost 7 now, but he was just a few months old when COVID hit. And
holy crap.
As much as everyone was saying, oh, it's not too bad if kids get it, it's like nobody knew for sure. We were really worried. We were worried for ourselves, but we were really worried for him. And so we were incredibly cautious, and we did a lot of outdoor stuff, but we anything that was inside, we were masked. Like, we were so cautious, and it totally changed our behavior, as it did for so many people. And obviously for everyone, our routines totally upended. And I think it was just those priorities shifted. Everything just felt so heightened. And so we still had infrastructure and utilities and electricity and all of that stuff. Not like the case in No Man's Land, but I don't know. I just kind of had that perspective in my head as I was reading this, and that helped a lot. The other thing too, there was this article in Wizard magazine number 89, and I have a few quotes that I want to read from it because I found it fascinating. But one of the previous Batman writers, Doug Mensch, he was not on board with this and left, didn't want to participate in No Man's Land. And Wizard had a quote from him about it. He said, "I didn't think it was a good story and didn't want to write it. I thought it was absurd that the U.S. government would deliberately cut Gotham off from the rest of the country." Now, I won't get overly political here, but I would just say, in terms of our very recent past and present, seeing what has gone on, where we've had the federal government invade cities, our own cities, the idea that they would go the opposite direction and totally cut off a city, especially in the context of this fictional universe. Not only do we have the earthquake, but previously there had been the plague as well.
The contagion,
Yeah, so it had been beset by all of these calamities. So the idea that this could happen does not feel that far-fetched. I understand, I suppose, Mensch's point at the time. And I think in previous readings of this, I probably did have the view of like, oh man, like, well, that would never actually happen. Now I'm reading it, I'm like, no, I actually could see this. So that also shifted the way I looked at this.
Oh yeah, like anything that happens. Again, the older that I get, and Zach and I talk about this a lot, but like when we were younger, we would watch things or read things and be like, "There's no way this would happen in real life." And then the older you get, you realize, no, this stuff happens all the time. We just didn't have the scope to understand it all, and like at a younger age, and so sadly, none of this stuff surprises me. The stuff that's happening in real life, and to an effect, it's kind of affecting how we view some of this media nowadays because because you will see villains and stuff in TV shows or movies, books or whatever, and you're not really all that taken aback by some of their evil doings because you're just like, well, I mean, it's not like, because sometimes you're like, well, it's not that bad because in real life it's worse, and that's affecting things, and that's going to affect the art that gets made in the moving forward because because it's going to be hard to make stakes and it's going to be hard to make villains for these types of things if the stuff we're dealing with in real life is worse. And so like the perspective is going to be way askew.
Yeah, man, absolutely. On the note of that Wizard article, the title of it was Risky Business. No Gotham City, a new Dark Knight, a revamped creative team. Is DC Comics risking Batman's future with the year-long No Man's Land storyline? And then they have this quote early on from group editor Denny O'Neil who says, and this really got me. He goes, "We're still not sure we can pull this off. It's possible there is a hole right in the middle of this that none of us are seeing. We could really fall on our faces."
I think that was the funniest part of that. Like when you sent me that, like that was the funniest part that I read is him being like, "Yeah, I don't know if this is gonna work, guys." And it's like, what? And like in hindsight, it's foresight that happens too late. But it's just like, what are you guys talking about? This is a gold mine. This is great. Y'all pulled all the right buttons.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there was something so refreshing about it because I don't feel like you hear things like that today in interviews.
No.
So, and it just took me back to the heyday of Wizard magazine and reading it at the time and all of that.
I missed that book.
But no, that quote just stood out. And it's the sort of thing I'm sure internally those sorts of conversations happen all the time, but just to see it in an interview. I mean, I've interviewed the Superman group editor over on my other podcast. It's like, if he had said something like that in an interview, that's the sort of thing I'd be like, "Hey man, like, do you want me to cut that?" Like, So it was just funny to me. But another big piece of the article, and of course, a big part of the discussion of No Man's Land itself, is how it was structured from a publishing and creative team perspective, because it was distinct from what the Bat books and the Superman books were doing. As far as how it got started, though, we had associate editor Jordan Gorfinkel, allegedly, who had the idea for this and came in with a 12-page proposal to shake things up with this story. And obviously Denny O'Neil went with it and we were off to the races. But in terms of how it was distinct, right, we're used to how the Batman books had functioned previously and the way the Superman books did during the Triangle era, or Spider-Man books over at Marvel when they would have a crossover, right? You would have each creative team handled its own title and therefore its own chapter of the story arc. Mm-hmm. So you'd have one team in one book doing part one and then another team in the next book doing part two and on and on. But here, what was so innovative was that they had each creative team handling an entire story arc across titles.
Yeah.
So you had Bob Gale and Alex Maleev doing that initial No Law and a New Order 4-parter across the core Bat titles.
Yeah.
Which I think was an ingenious way of doing this. I mean, look, huge Superman fan, love the Triangle era. Those teams worked amazingly well together to great effect, but there is something to be said for having that cohesive team and vision for a complete story arc, start to finish. I mean, I feel like that goes such a long way towards the readability and rereadability of this story.
I agree with you. Yeah, that's, and it's crazy that was like we don't really think about, I guess, necessarily the repercussions of that nowadays because it's more commonplace. But back then, that was the big deal. It's a big shakeup, and that's a big change from the status quo of how these things are normally done.
And hand in hand with that, I mean, look, clearly someone like Doug Mensch was not looking to stick around, but otherwise, they really mixed it up in terms of who they brought in. And you had people writing Batman who hadn't previously written Batman or hadn't written comics. I mean, they brought in screenwriter Bob Gale. They brought in novelist Greg Rucka. I mean, it's crazy because, I think of Greg Rucka now, and I think of all of his comic book work, the amazing run that he would have on Detective Comics, Gotham Central, Adventures of Superman, Wonder Woman, on and on. But I mean, this was the start of him writing comics.
Yeah, which is crazy. Crazy. And speaking of that novel, I did read that. I found this and read it in college. I was like, yeah, it's just as riveting.
So that's the one piece of this that I knew I wasn't going to have time for it. I do plan, I'll be honest, I would love at some point over the course of doing this podcast to be able to interview Greg Ruck. I would love to be able to talk to him.
Me too.
So I'm kind of putting that in my back pocket. I'm going to maybe save that novel for if and when I ever have that opportunity. But I do have it on my shelf. I've heard nothing but amazing things. I intend to read it. Although, it's funny. Maybe you'll identify with this. There is a part of me that kind of likes knowing that I have one aspect of No Man's Land still to experience.
Yeah.
Like everyone knows who listens to the other show how formative The Death and Return of Superman was for me. I didn't read that novelization until last year.
Really?
Yeah. And a big part of it was kind of wanting to save that little piece of it.
Interesting. See, I read that one in elementary school, like shortly after, basically when it first became available. I was all on that.
Yeah. But I was thinking a lot about the impact it had on me in terms of shaping my fandom, the way I see the character, the fact that I started with No Man's Land.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a few takeaways as I was going through this, because I think and I've said this so many times over the years that our first impressions with these characters, or like I said, this wasn't my first impression of Batman, but in a regular, substantial way, those first impressions are so formative in shaping our fandom, how we see the character. And so I'm like, okay, what did it mean for me as a budding Batman fan that this was the first Batman comic book storyline / event that I read? Like, what did that do for me? I think one of the things is it inoculated me, I guess, against that very common criticism of Batman, the Bat God argument, right? That, oh, he can just do anything. And I get why fans feel that way sometimes. I think especially if you're looking at this character in the context of the wider DC universe where he's shoulder to shoulder with these godlike beings. It's like, well, you want to show that he can more than hold his own. You want to show that he's capable. But maybe sometimes that does go a bit too far and he's uber capable beyond the realm of believability. But here in this story, he's been gone from No Man's Land for 3 months. Mm-hmm. We find out later he left. He retreated into that Bruce Wayne persona. He's out there in the streets letting himself get attacked. He's lost his way. He's lost his reason and his purpose. We ultimately will find out it's Talia who kind of sets him straight. And she's like, hey, you're a disgrace to me, to yourself, to your parents. And he gets his head on straight and he returns. But even when he returns, the symbol doesn't mean what it did before. Mm-hmm. He adopts the practice of the gangs and the other folks who have their territories of tagging, of spray painting his symbol in his area. And Gordon paints over it. We'll get to Gordon more in a moment, but Gordon paints over it. The other gangs spray paint their symbol over it. So he's finding that the symbol doesn't mean what it did before. Early on, Alfred's in danger. He's got to get to Alfred. He's late because he doesn't know how to navigate this version of the city. And finally, he's so convinced at the outset of this that he has to do it alone. Although he still uses Alfred, he still uses Oracle, so not totally alone. But he sends the boys away. He sends Nightwing away, he sends Robin away. Like he thinks this is something he has to do on his own. And it's only when he finally brings everyone back into the fold that we start to get some forward momentum in terms of this quest to reclaim the city. So what this story demonstrated for me, I think, is that it doesn't come totally easy for him. And this was a struggle spiritually and physically and tactically. And so I guess maybe that's part of the reason why I don't get hung up on that argument about Batman, because I had a very early formative instance where that was not the case.
Mm-hmm. Well, see, the real ones know that is not the case. And you mostly hear that from people who are trying to oversimplify things with him, which annoys me quite to no end. Like that's one of the things that annoys me with the discourse on Batman. Why doesn't Bruce Wayne, actually do something with his money and try to help? It's just like, y'all, like if you spend 2 seconds reading any Batman comic, you will see that Bruce Wayne is the only ethical billionaire that's ever existed, ever. And so and so like that's something that gets at me. He just spends his time, beating up poor people. It's just like that's not what's going on, y'all. So those things that annoy me, but you are right. Like this does showcase that like you have like that Batman, well, I think one of his enduring qualities is that he, we recognize the struggle. We recognize the struggle of somebody trying to do their best and just continuing to do it. Right. And that's what makes him a, an inspirational type of hero. Superman's aspirational, but Batman is inspirational. And I think that is that's the separators between the two, but that's also like the key to his appeal is that.
Right on. Yeah. So that went such a long way for me right out of the gate as a new Batman reader. Another takeaway I had is that I know and I include myself in this, have often held up Hush, which was another early tentpole as a Batman reader for me, but we hold it up as this great tour through the world of Batman, his allies and his enemies. And it is that. And there's something to be said for having a very compact 12-issue storyline you can give to someone versus a sprawling year-long saga. So I'm not saying it doesn't have its value. But one of the other things I realized as I was going through this again, I was like, man, you talk about a tour through this world. No Man's Land is it. And obviously I was plenty familiar with the Batman Rogues Gallery between the movies and the animated series and all of that. So it's not like I was really meeting the villains for the first time. But I think what was so striking here is that you see, and this is obviously a key theme of No Man's Land itself, these moral questions of what's right, how far do you go? But specifically in the context of the villains, the fact that in a lot of instances, Batman works with them. He allows them to operate. He strikes deals with them. Penguin's got his whole trading market going, and Batman allows him to operate in exchange for information. Ivy is in Robinson Park, and she's caring for all of these orphaned, stranded children. And Batman realizes, like, I have no place to bring these kids. They're actually safest with Ivy, and allows her to continue to operate. Gordon strikes a very ill-advised deal with Two-Face, which we'll get into more. But it was one of those things where not only are you getting to meet all the villains and I think seeing their core attributes, but you're also seeing another layer to them. You're seeing a bit more of the person behind the larger than life villain, and some of the moral complexity that goes along there. And then the fact that Batman would actually engage with some of them out of necessity, but nevertheless, like it really stood out.
Yeah. Well, again, like as with everything, with all these characters that we love, they're people first, right? And so, and that's what I think what this story gets right a lot of the ways, and also the fact that you have to remember they have years of experience and interaction with each other. Like they know each other, like on a pretty intimate level. I mean, especially like somebody like Two-Face, he knows Jim Gordon, he knows Batman. Like they work together. They had a thing for a little bit, Penguin again, they've had years of interactions and all these things. Like they're not friends, obviously, but they're definitely acquaintances. Like they know each other. There's somewhat of a code between them all. There's an understanding with a lot of them. And like, for example, Batman knows how far he can go with them, but also the criminals also know how far they can do, and they can go with some of the stuff that they plan and plot, right? Because they don't ever cross certain lines because they understand what the consequences are most of the time. So it's very interesting to see them through this lens. One of the things that I picked up on and kind of realized in reading this, and when you talk about like these, all the factions and how these people are interacting and the things that they're doing, I think one of the things that also made me really enjoy this reread this time is that this is Game of Thrones, but in the DC universe. In a lot of ways, you have all these territories on this one island, and everybody, people are making deals. Who's on top, who's not. Each area has a tag, has a sigil. Like the feudalism is in full swing, and like the structure of everything. I was like, and I was when I was reading this, like this is Game of Thrones, but in the DC universe, essentially. And everybody has a player, and like there's a head honcho for every little area. It was very much like that.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I mean, I guess maybe this is as good a place as any. I mentioned Penguin with his market and his secret pipeline. We'll find out he has access to this underground railroad, and folks are able to get out by way of that mechanism. We have Ivy in the park. We will find out she's been subjugated by Clayface, and that requires Batman and Robin's intervention. But she is growing produce. She's caring for the kids. Other villains fall into more traditional roles, although Black Mask sort of really goes off the deep end and is starring himself and prompting his followers to do the same and essentially forming this cult. I guess, though, as far as the roles, the territories that we see these villains pop up in, anyone that was particularly striking or surprising to you or that you just enjoyed?
The striking one is the Blue Boys and the police, because they, with the shutdown of the city and it being declared a no man's land, they're no longer police. And so they engage in activities that are not befitting of their badge and their profession, and they kind of get down in the muck with everybody else. Granted, they're doing it for morally good reasons, and they have the right intention, obviously, but they are just as dirty as a lot of these people. Gordon incites a war between people, between two different rival gangs. The other tactics that they're using to deal with Two-Face, and the stuff that he has Montoya do on his behalf, knowing that it's a dangerous situation and knowing that he's using her and he's using like something that he knows about, something like it's like just for leverage. Again, they compromise a lot of their morals and ethics because the environment says that, because the environment dictates it. But it has the villains kind of look at them a little sideways oftentimes, and the people that call them out on it are Penguin in particular and Two-Face in particular, and rightfully they should. And so I think that was the most interesting aspect of it. And of course, there were rogue agents within the Blue Boys, Pettit obviously, but because my God, that got dark. So, but again, also not surprising.
Yeah. Billy Pettit, a bullet for every man, woman, and child in Gotham City. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Blue Boys side of things and Gordon's role in this, absolutely fascinating. And yes, probably the most morally questionable and interesting of all of this in terms of how far he'll go. I mean, Gordon, your heart breaks for this guy because he tried to get out. He and Sarah tried to get out. Mm-hmm. When the no man's land was declared, and he couldn't land a job anywhere. And as he will ultimately explain to Batman, he's like, I wasn't even trying to be commissioner. I was just trying to get a detective job. He's like, they all laughed at me for needing to rely on an urban legend to do my policing. Some laughed to my face, some laughed behind my back.
Yep.
And on top of that, Batman, the person who's supposed to be his friend and ally, gone without a word, MIA for months of this. So from Gordon's perspective, he's done with Batman. Mm-hmm. And he, at the beginning of this, when those bat symbols start to pop up, he's pissed. There's a sense of denial. He's like, well, Batman wouldn't do that. It becomes clear, right, that Batman is back. And he delivers this message through our new Batgirl. We'll have more to say on her.
Yep.
Essentially saying, like, I don't want you here. Like, stay away. I don't want your help. And in his desperation, he turns to Two-Face. Yes. Or I suppose Two-Face initially reaches out to him. But Jim aligns himself with Two-Face, who provides the support that Gordon and the Blue Boys desperately need as they're trying to expand their territory. And even before the Two-Face deal, early on, like you're saying, Gordon and the Blue Boys instigate this gang war to thin the herd so that they can take the territory. And there's also a point early on where you have Pettit, who's overly aggressive, always pushing, where they've captured some gang members and they realize they don't really have any place to put them. So what's the solution? And the idea is, okay, we'll kick them out, tell them to spread the word, stay out of this territory. But Pettit feels that the message needs to be delivered more forcefully. And so he executes one of the guys. And no, Gordon's not the one who pulls the trigger, but he's right there when it happens.
He's right there. Yeah.
Yeah. And even Pettit himself early on, when Gordon and his guys are trying to instigate this gang war, they think they can accomplish this by spray painting symbols one over the other. And then one of the gangs comes up and Pettit's there and takes them all out.
Takes them all out.
And it's one of those things where I'm no Billy Pettit defender. I do want to be clear. But I think what makes this so compelling is that a lot of what he's articulating, it's not that there's no logic to it.
No.
Right? He is recognizing a reality of the situation, obviously taking it to an extreme, but that's what makes it compelling. I mean, the person I had in my head was Shane in the early seasons of The Walking Dead, right? Where he's kind of playing some things out and wanting to take these steps to ensure the safety of the group, obviously going too far. But it's one of those things, you look at a show like Walking Dead, by the time you get deeper into that series, those characters are arguably doing things that Shane would have been doing or that he was advocating for at the beginning.
Yeah, well, it's that, but also like Pettit is such a really a tragic character, even in addition to just being an asshole. But like, he's a tragic character because he's obviously this soldier who never stopped the war,
right.
and he can't turn it off. And so he sees this is his probably the first time he's ever felt alive in a long since he left that environment, and that's so sad because he feels right at home, and he's ready for the job, and he relishes all of this. And again, as you're saying, it's not like he's not making sense with a lot of the things that he's saying. He is correct, because at this point, because again, there is no law. Like the rules are out the window, and so it's not like he doesn't have a place that he's coming from that isn't grounded in some sort of factual reality, because he is. But it's just a sad case of it's like he finally got like that green light to do what he probably really wanted to do, and it just sucks that this is the situation. It's tragic.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because it's like when their plan is, okay, we're going to let these captured gang members go, tell them they can't come back, have them tell their compatriots like this area is off limits. It's like, well, okay, that might work. It might not. And then this might end up blowing up in your face. But if we take a more drastic step here to really impress upon them how serious we are, that might accomplish our goals. It's very interesting, especially early on with the Blue Boys, because Gordon is trying to make this push to expand the territory, take back the city. And you have Pettit, who's, like we said, just aggressive and violent. But on the other hand, you have a character like Foley, who seems to represent the other perspective and is preaching caution and seems to feel like Gordon's intentions are more personal. He's trying to protect Barbara, for example. Right. That he doesn't necessarily have the unit's best interests at heart.
Well, it's more than just trying to protect Barbara. He's also like, it's for his ego, because he's like, I want to be the one that does this and show, that I can do this, A, without Batman, and B, and show everybody else that I'm actually competent in my job. And they should not have laughed at me to my face or behind my back, that I deserved whatever job that I could have gone after. And like, that's like, so part of it is definitely his ego. And so, and he gets called out for that by Foley, in a lot of this, because he's trying to operate as some wartime general, but like it's only kind of going half cocked. And so and he kind of hedges a little bit, but he still allows Pettit to do stuff, but then at the same time he makes the deal with Two-Face. And so again, he's kind of all over the place. This is a very interesting and probably like the most meaty thing Gordon's had to do in Batman history, in his history as a character, is this. And I'm so glad that we got this, because otherwise we really wouldn't have all that much to say about Gordon. But this really puts him in a very interesting position as a character.
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. Like, yeah, this guy, he's got a chip on his shoulder. He's got something to prove that he doesn't need Batman, to prove that those other police departments were wrong about him, all of that. Not to harp on the Foley thing, but I was surprised, I don't know if you were, that Foley ultimately went along with Pettit. Yeah. Because it seemed like in those earlier conversations, they were opposed in terms of the counsel that they were giving Gordon. But I don't know. I guess they were both similarly fed up with Jim, that maybe that aligned them. Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the other big takeaways I had is the potential of these kinds of events. And we already talked about how this was structured in terms of creative teams. And like I said, I think that was a really ingenious way to do this and really help with the flow of these stories. By the way, these stories, the longest story arc, 4 issues. There are a lot of done in ones. We have a bunch of 2-parters, a couple of 3-parters. So I really appreciated the structure of this event, and it read really well. I mean, I reread. I mean, we're talking dozens and dozens of issues over the past few days. It's a lot
of books.
It's a lot of material, but it read great. So there's that. But more importantly, and going back to what you were saying before about how we feel like this doesn't often get talked about, or certainly not talked about enough. And I agree. And that's why we're doing this for episode 2 of this podcast. I mean, I'm hard pressed to think of another event that achieves what this one does in terms of, this is not a plot-based event, right?
Mm-hmm.
There is plot. They're trying to capture territory and there's a back and forth. And certainly by the time we get to the final months of this and the quote unquote outside interest is finally revealed to be Lex Luthor and he emerges as the savior of Gotham City. But of course he's got an ulterior motive and he's got this real estate play to take over the city. No wonder why I ended up loving the story though as a kid who was this hardcore Superman fan. This is my first Batman story and it's like the final boss, Lex Luthor. It's like, of course, this is great. But so we get more of a plot driven component as we get deeper into it. But by and large, this is a character driven event that's essentially a morality play. And I am hard pressed to think of another event of this scope in superhero comics that's a year long and spans all of these titles that focuses on the character side of things and these moral questions to this extent.
Yeah, I think it stands alone for the most part. I think the only thing that's coming across top of mind that kind of comes close is 52.
Sure. Yeah.
But you think about the other big events for DC: Crisis, no. Nightfall, no. Death and Life of Superman, no. Funeral for a Friend, no. Hush, no, not really. Yeah, not like this.
Yeah. And by the way, we love a lot of those other events, and it's not to say this is what an event needs to be, but the fact that, and maybe this is why Denny O'Neil in that interview was so concerned, was that, this is not what I think you would expect for something like this, but it's so immersive, it's so engrossing, and I'm just so thrilled that this was the track that they took. And then maybe my final kind of core takeaway in terms of how it shaped me as an early Batman reader, I've already been quoting this. I think I'll continue to quote this in so many of our episodes, but that Morrison line, the first truth of Batman, the saving grace, I was never alone. And going back to what I was saying a moment ago, I mean, like, that's what you see throughout the story. He needs the people around him, even from the beginning when he's doing it alone, so to speak. He still has Alfred. He still has Oracle. It's about halfway through the assembly issue where he finally brings in Azrael and Robin and Nightwing, and we have the new Cassandra Cain Batgirl. And it's quite deep into the story before he finally repairs things with Gordon in an absolute standout issue, Legends 125, my favorite issue of this entire thing.
Oh no, it's the best part.
But that's what this story shows. He's only able to save the city and the soul of the city by working with all of these people. And I just continue to love the idea that this loner in so many ways, right, has built this family and inspired these people around him.
Well, the thing is, that's at the heart of everything, right? For the people that actually understand this character, that's what it's about. He lost his parents at 8 years old, and through his quest and through his trials and tribulations and through his mission, he is simultaneously and eventually blessed to get himself a found family through it all. Like that's the fight. That is the scales balancing for him. And that's the thing that he comes to realize in certain issues and in certain cases. Like it's something that he comes to realize. Unfortunately, it's something that they have to have him. It's a lesson they have to have him learn over and over again, which is kind of annoying. But I understand the point of it. This is something I struggle with on Arrow as well. It's just like they're having Oliver learn this very similar message, too often. But they do it a lot with Batman as well. But that's the entire point, right? That's the point of Dick Grayson. That's the point of everybody that follows him, right? Like he lost a family, but he gains one, the found family thing. But it's more profound for him because of his character's origins.
Yeah. But I mean, all to say that for me, I'm just so grateful that I started with this because this story had all of those ingredients in this saga. And it just shaped the way that I see the character and what I can expect from a story and from an event like this. So, I mean, I'm very grateful that this was what got me into reading Batman comics. And we'll throw out another quote, but sometimes people deserve to have their faith rewarded. And it's one of those things, you know what it's like, right? Where we have these things we read or we watch as kids, and you come back to them later. And sometimes they hold up, and sometimes they don't. Sometimes you still like them, but it's more out of the nostalgia. But you kind of see the seams, and it doesn't hold up in the same way. But then you have something like this, where, like I was saying before, I mean, like, this is the most that I've ever enjoyed this story, and I guess one of the other things with, as we kind of dig in even deeper with the major themes, dynamics, moments of the saga, is, yes, it's this morality play, and we've talked about these questionable situations and choices with Batman, with Gordon, and so on. But this saga also allows space for these one-off stories with the ordinary citizens of Gotham, which to me is such a refreshing choice that they would do something like that. We have the issue with the retired sergeant who's holding on to his house amidst all of these gang wars and the changeover in who's controlling the block.
Yeah.
Something like that was great. There's the issue where there are two women who each claim that this infant child belongs with them, that they would be the better caretaker. And Batman has to try to solve the situation. And he tries to employ the wisdom of King Solomon and offer and say he's going to cut the kid in half to see who steps up. But they're both just like, hey, you're crazy. Right. And then ultimately, what is his solution? You need to care for him together, especially in this situation where one of you is out looking for food, the other can care for him. There's Mikey, the member or the former member of the Black Mask gang cult, who turns over a new leaf and he helps out at the church led by Father Christian, and he ends up getting severely injured, and he's taken to Leslie Tompkins' clinic, but really proves himself. Leslie herself, I mean, you kind of when you kind of look at the range of morality in the players of this tale, you have someone like Leslie Tompkins, this saintly woman who's maintaining her clinic in the midst of all of this, but so devoted to pacifism that not only does she care for Zaz, but she is willing to let him kill her. Rather than resort to violence. And of course she's saved, but that's how far she's willing to go.
She stands 10 toes down. And again, but that is true to her character. That's what she's always been. That's why people respect her. And that's why nothing ended up happening to her, right? Because there is a strength there. That's one of the other fascinating things with that. That's one of the ones I forgot about. And it's again, like, these side characters, these other people who are not in costume but are huge parts of Bruce's life, get a very good shine, and in a place in a spotlight to kind of showcase why they're important to not only him but like to this ecosystem that has been built for these characters.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's the Underground Railroad story. It's a two-parter, fairly deep into the proceedings, and that follows Hardback Bach, right, from the GCPD. And I remember I didn't have the sharpest memory of that two-parter. And when I started going through it, I'm like, all right, like, we're deep into the story at this point. I'm like, I don't know if this is where I want the focus to be at this moment, but pulled me right in. And he goes to such lengths to get these sick kids that he's helping to care for out of Gotham through this secret underground railroad system that Penguin is privy to. And in order to secure the kid's passage, he has to essentially cage fight this behemoth of a man and is able to prevail.
Yep.
So, throughout this, those kinds of stories really stood out, and I feel like really gave No Man's Land a lot of texture that it wouldn't have otherwise had if we were really just fixated on the villains and the Bat family. Like, really drilling down on the people went such a long way.
Yes. No, I agree. Again, because it makes like Gotham is an actual place, and there are people that actually live there and choose to live there and choose to stay, And so, like, despite everything that they know about the place, like it's their place, Everybody has something like that, right? Where all of the the problematic things with, but it's your thing, right? And so you defend it, you put up with it, and you stand by it. Like, everybody has something like that in their life.
Step into the refraction with Drunken Avenger #1, The Volunteer, an indie comic by Rick Reason that turns the tropes upside down. 4 men died in 9 seconds. John Stevens survived, but survival has a price. Now, the government calls him a variable. The media calls him the Drunken Avenger. And the city of Meridian is caught in the crossfire between civil liberty and national security. Follow @Drunken Avenger on social media for project updates and previews. I talk about Smallville a lot, but But when it comes to listening, one podcast is at the top of my queue. Always Hold On to Smallville, hosted by our pal, Zach Moore. Zach and his guests bring tremendous insight, passion, and humor to each and every episode. And while their series rewatch has concluded, the podcast continues with more great Smallville and Superman talk. Listen wherever you get podcasts, and keep an eye out for the other shows on the Always Hold On To network. My comic shop closed over a decade ago, but if there's one place where I feel that same sense of camaraderie, it's Fat Moose Comics, New Jersey's best and oldest comic book store, led by current owner Sean Hendricks. If you're looking for something and they don't have it, they can probably get it for you. They know a guy. Visit Fat Moose in Whippany, New Jersey, and be sure to reach out via the Fat Moose Comics Facebook page. I'm a parent, which means that a family-friendly comic shop is a must, and there's none better than Aw Yeah Comics. Visit one of their 3 locations, Harrison, New York, Muncie, Indiana, or Skokie, Illinois, home to our pal, Sweet Sweet Bernie. Follow them on social media and at awyeahcomics.com for news about signings, live sales, and much more. Their name says exactly how they feel about it. Say it with me now. Aw yeah. Yeah, and I guess kind of building off of that, I mean, yes, I think I think it's a long-term question of like, why would anybody live in Gotham City? But it's really brought home here where the question then becomes, well, why would anybody stay once the no man's land was declared and they had X amount of time to get out before all the bridges and tunnels are blown? But you understand, and we are told numerous times throughout the story, but I think we can identify the variety of situations that there are. There are some people who are too sick or too poor or have nowhere to go or see an opportunity here, who realize, hey, this probably isn't going to be forever. I can actually come out ahead in this. Or like Sarge, feels so strongly like this is my home. Yes. I'm going to stay and I'm going to defend it, even though now I'm in this literal no man's land that's no longer part of this country and is just devolved into this lawlessness. I mean, No Law and a New Order is a perfect title for the kickoff arc here, because it really kind of sums it up. Like, we don't have the traditional trappings here of organized society, but there is an order that is going to emerge. And that's one of the other things too, as far as the texture of this that I really liked, is just seeing how people are bartering for things, right? Like how jewelry has become largely worthless, but like a jar of peanut butter is everything.
Yeah, or like a flashlight, batteries, these types of things, a bike, people in their professions, and the things that, don't want to get on my soapbox here just yet, but or too much, I should say. But like there's the parts of those where like, these gangs are like, looking at these different people, and somebody's like, I'm a seamstress. They're like, we need you. It's like, I'm a mechanic. I can fix things. We need you. Somebody who does, whatever he was, like, I'm an analyst for blah, 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 blah. It's like, what does that mean? Like, how is that useful to anybody here? Right. So a lot of professions and trades that people look down upon, a lot of professions and trades that don't get paid a whole lot, they become incredibly useful because those skills are part of what makes society work and function. And it's, it's funny. You mentioned like the pandemic. Like, I am going to get my soapbox here, but it's like, that was one of those times where me as a teacher, you got to see all this showing of support and people understanding. It's like, man, like it's great that we actually have paid professionals to deal with these children every single day, because I can't. Like there were millions of parents who were saying this, like I can't believe you have to deal with this every single day. And then, but of course, like, when stuff starts to wear on them, it's like, nah, get them out of here. And like, and it became, the teacher's problem again. And so it's like one of those things, like you don't know what you don't necessarily need until it's not around anymore. And that was another thing that was highlighted in this.
I could not agree more. No, I'm totally, you stay on that soapbox. I'm with you. And there's another story, the character they refer to as the King of Gotham, who is essentially this tradesperson. I think we find out he's an ex-convict. Yeah. And he learned all of these trades in prison, and then he's going around, he's teaching people how to collect and filter rainwater and setting up all of these systems.
Yes.
And then Killer Croc goes to great lengths to kills all these other people in the quest to try to find this guy so he could be king and all of that. But yeah, I mean, that ordinary civilian perspective it was absolutely phenomenal. I really loved that aspect of things. And we talked about Gordon. We mentioned this deal with Two-Face. I want to talk a little bit more about Two-Face, because another fascinating piece. And this ties in with maybe a bit more of the mechanical portion of this as far as the quest for territory and things like that. Like, just as an example for folks, there's a 2-part story, Claim Jumping, where Two-Face really plays everyone to come out ahead, where he goes to Penguin to make this deal. He's like, well, if you ease off my territory here, I can get you Batman's land. And his whole idea, Two-Face's idea, is he's going to lure Batman into this trap, which he does. But when that happens, Penguin and his men advance on the Bat territory, while at the same time, Gordon makes his advance into Penguin's territory. And after Penguin's guys get to the Bat territory, Two-Face shows up and takes over. So instead of Penguin doubling his territory in this period, he ends up having it halved. So there's the back and forth like that, but I love the strategy. I love the tactics of all of that. And I love also the visual device of the map and the color coding, which we see a number of times. Great way to guide us along. I love it.
Again, it's Game of Thrones, man. Like, that's exactly what's going on.
Yeah. But and as far as this deal with Jim, so yes, Two-Face does make this approach. They forge this very ill-advised alliance, and he does quote unquote help in various instances, but then he also tries to have Jim killed. He hires the assassin David Kane to take him out, which ties into our new Batgirl.
Yes.
And this is also where we see the start of Two-Face's fixation with Renee Montoya, which will continue to play out.
Well, it was already there is the thing, but this just gave more fuel to the fire, should I say. The novel goes into a little bit more detail about that, because like, especially like his two halves talking to each other about everything. And that's kind of humorous. It's like the two angels on the shoulder arguing about stuff with Harvey, but he's down bad for that girl, man.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, like, there's that Batman Chronicles issue that Rucka wrote that's set in the road to no man's land, and they have an encounter there. And then, of course, it continues to play out here where after Jim has backed out of the deal, Two-Face takes Renee and her brother and her parents and holds them for months.
Yes.
And then in the 2-part story, Jurisprudence takes Jim as well and puts him on trial. And forces Renee to be the bailiff. And oh man, maybe this is the lawyer in me, but I love this 2-parter. And I love how Renee gets Harvey to defend.
Yes, to
Jim.
defend him. Yeah. And then it's so good. It's just so good. It's so good. Like, and of course, like using the coin to decide if he's actually going to do it. And then he calls himself to the stand. And then the whole not guilty thing. And just like, he seems like he's broken afterwards. I mean, man, good stuff.
It's so good. And on the Harvey note, so I talked about that claim jumping story where he ends up taking part of Batman's territory, and to really make his point, he kills 6 people and strings them up for Batman to find. And this causes a major fracture between Batman and the first Batgirl here in the story, who was supposed to defend the territory. But
what was I supposed to do? More.
And she'll have her moment of redemption.
Yes.
But right after that, Batman goes to Harvey and like has this moment with him where he's like, you're leaving me with very few options, essentially. Like, at a certain point, I'm only going to have one choice and we're both going to lose.
Yep.
And although I do question why could Harvey not have gone to Blackgate? Because one of the deals that Batman made was with the villain Lockup to maintain Blackgate. But for whatever reason, that wasn't in the cards, at least at that point in the story, for him to do it with Harvey.
I guess.
But I just love that moment that, like, what am I going to do with you, essentially? Like, what are you going to force me to do? On the note of Lockup and Blackgate, I love that aspect of it too, right? Because that's an early question, particularly for the Blue Boys. It's like, well, all right, when we quote unquote arrest these people, where do we put them? What do we do with them? But yeah, Batman has this whole system with Blackgate. When he ultimately brings the other Bat family members into the fold, he gives Nightwing the task of infiltrating and taking over Blackgate from Lockup, who now really kind of needs to be shut down at this point, relishing his role too much. And I'm just saying to myself, that's a big ask.
Yeah, but he gave that task to the person he trusts the most outside of Alfred.
Yeah. Yeah, and Dick accomplishes it, and that's in the Nightwing title, those tie-in issues. That's one of those things where we were talking off mic, and maybe this is as good a place as any to mention it. As far as adaptations of No Man's Land, there were plans. There was a pitch for an animated series that James Tucker would have been a producer on. And I was reading a little bit further there. I think there were two versions of a pitch because I saw two different kind of batches of concept art. I think one of them would have been 3D animation style. The other one was more traditional. Okay. Obviously, it didn't move forward. But I say to myself, I would love to see an animated series, even a limited series adaptation of No Man's Land. And I look at something like Dick Grayson infiltrating and taking over Blackgate Prison. Like that could be, you think about a 2 or 3 episode arc or something like that. I mean, I feel like that would be amazing.
Love it. Sign me up.
And then one other sort of, and I wouldn't say a major category of stories, but it's something that does come up a number of times. And I'm glad that it does. And it's the whole question of, well, what about the other heroes in the DC universe? Like they're just allowing this to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And
this is one of those things that, like, as we get older, we understand things. It's like, okay, so if they're in the same universe, why aren't they around? Right. We have this experience with all the movies for, whatever universe it is, you pick your poison. But like, there's a question. It's like, well, where's the rest of the Justice League during this event? Where are the Avengers during this event? These are valid questions. And so, I completely understand.
Yeah. And once again, if ever there were a Batman story made for me, we mostly see this explored through the lens of Superman. There are two instances when Superman comes to Gotham City, once early on as Superman, and the second time as Clark, much later on. And I loved both of these stories because
I did too.
In the first instance,
especially him as Clark.
Yes. Oh my God. But in that first instance, as Superman, he does find this civil engineer and takes him to the power plant, and they're going to start to get power restored to at least a portion of the city. Mm-hmm. And Superman seems to think, okay, like this is a major win. And it's so jarring for him because what he observes early on is we have people paying tribute to Mad Hatter, I believe was in that issue. People are paying tribute for protection, for whatever he's able to provide. And at the end of the story, after setting up this engineer now to run this power plant, people are lining up to offer him tribute. Like there's this battle for the soul. Like these people have been so fundamentally changed, broken by these circumstances. And that's not something that he's able to fix, at least not fix in the way that he's used to.
Correct.
So I thought that was great. And then I loved so much when he came back much deeper into this as Clark. And he does make it rain, but he has this like great conversation with this guy about his garden and farming techniques, right? Because he's reckoned. And this also, hand in hand with this, I'll put my Superman hat on for a second. Like at this point in the Superman books, we had the whole King of the World business where it turned out he had been influenced by the villain Dominus, but like he had set himself up. He was trying to solve all the world's ills. And yes, there was this outside influence, but also you don't realize like, no, this is not the path forward. So you got to see him kind of employing what he learned through that whole process here as well, and trying to make more of a small person-to-person difference as opposed to just coming in with like a quick fix.
Yeah. I hear you.
Did you read that JLA issue that Mark Waid and Devin Grayson co-wrote? It's like JLA 33 or something like that.
No, didn't get that one.
Because that's totally fine. Believe me, there was plenty here, but that also kind of addresses this question, maybe from a bit of a broader perspective, because you have this telepathic conversation between Superman and Huntress, where Huntress is basically saying what are you guys doing? Like we need help here. And Superman's responses over the course of this issue seem to take 3 forms. One, he does say like our presence there would be illegal.
Yeah.
Your mileage on that will vary, but that is one of the arguments, which is technically true. The other big thing is that we find out in that issue that the JLA is and has been protecting Gotham from these outside invasions. So Mark Waid had done this JLA Year One maxi series, and there was a genetic terrorist group in there called Locus, and he brought them back for this issue of JLA, and they were trying to use Gotham as their private laboratory. And so the JLA is working to stop them. So the idea was, it's like, hey, no, they are actually helping Gotham, but from a different perspective in a different way. And then the last answer, which I guess is the most heartwarming, is he says to Huntress, he's like, when you ask why we don't have any JLAers in Gotham, I thought you realized we already do. Like Huntress was a member of the team at this point. So again, it's one of those things. I'm glad that they addressed it. And ultimately I find these answers satisfactory because like, I think one of the other major strong points of No Man's Land is that it's not it's not ultimately the result of a villain plot. It's like, yes, Lex will come in at the end and he'll make his play for Gotham. And I know in the road to No Man's Land, you had Nicholas Scratch, who was one of the instigators for trying to get Gotham declared a No Man's Land. But at the end of the day, it's not like someone came in and leveled Gotham and cut it off from the country. Like, this was something that happened.
Yes.
I love that. And I also love the fact that we didn't get a magical fix for Gotham, because when Metropolis was destroyed in the 90s in the Fall of Metropolis storyline, post Zero Hour, the city was back. And it's like, oh, it was a mystery for the audience for a little while. Like, how did this happen? And then it turns out it was the magicians of the DC universe, and they used Perry White's memory of the city to rebuild it. And it's like, all right. But I love the approach that we take here.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of, and you mentioned the, this is just something that happened aspect, and getting to like the people thing, the Bruce Wayne of all of this. You forget Bruce Wayne after the initial earthquake. Bruce Wayne goes to Congress and pleads with people in Washington for their help and support. And that is one of the things that breaks him, is the fact that, like, he, again, people, for the crowd of people that think that Bruce Wayne doesn't do anything to help, Bruce Wayne goes himself and goes to Congress to try to advocate on Gotham's behalf to get to get their help, and is just shunned. Right, they don't take him seriously. He's, in the novelization, Bruce, when he's talking, he's just like, the Bruce Wayne mask and persona was a little too good because they didn't take him seriously. And so that's one of the things that kind of breaks him, because again, he has the right intentions. He's doing what he thinks is right. He did the right thing, trying to, like, because again, that's something he couldn't fix as Batman, but as Bruce Wayne, he felt, I could probably get this to happen, and it didn't work. And he's made to look like a fool. And that's one of the things that makes him, not around for 3 months, is that. And so, and then part of it, like, the novel in particular, there's they explain his absence as him making legitimate excuses for why Bruce Wayne is not going to be around. So that way, when he's in there as as Batman, it'll be easier to kind of like understand, like, he's just around places. He's in, like, he makes fake calls to Lucius saying that he's in Nice, France, or he's in Monte Carlo, or he's in this place and this place and this place. And so that's what he's doing, and that's what he explains. But for part of it, at least, it's he's definitely, like, he was definitely feeling sorry for himself, because again, like, he felt as Batman, as somebody who had self-made all of this stuff, he felt powerless, probably for the first time since his back was broken, which was which was at this point, what, 5 years earlier?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. He fails in a way that he typically doesn't, and he fails as Bruce and Batman. And I think that, the scope of this is so vast, and it might be in the Ground Zero special. I forget exactly, but there is this moment of self-awareness where he just realizes how vast the problem is before him, and how, I think that was daunting at the outset. And then, of course, he makes his plan and he gets at it. But yeah, I mean, to have the entire city leveled and abandoned, it's like, what's left? And then obviously he finds his way back. But yeah, I mean, to bring him down to that point and then build him back up, a lot of value in a story like that.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I love that Ground Zero special and showing what he's been up to and how he ends up getting back. And I love all this business about the satellite bat caves throughout the city, and the fact that he set those up after being broken by Bane. Yep. Like, that's perfect. So a few more things to get into here, but I actually want to jump to some patron comments and questions that will flesh out a little bit more here, because they brought up some great stuff here. By the way, our $1 a month tier, you'll be the first to know about what we're going to cover, and you can submit a comment or question to be read on the episode. So my thanks to all patrons, and if anyone is listening and you'd like to join, we'd love to have you. But more specifically here, Jeff says, and this is really, I think, a central piece. Jeff says, No Man's Land gave us Cassandra Cain, the death of Sarah Gordon, and the first real direct conflict between Batman and Luthor that I recall. But what do you think its legacy is? In the end, was it just another storyline, or do you think it had a lasting impact on the characters? And I'll also add to Jeff's question, not only did it introduce our new Batgirl, it introduced friggin' Harley Quinn.
Yes.
To comics.
Kind of bearing the lead on that one. I'll touch the Cassandra Cain part of it. This is, Cassandra Cain now is my favorite Batgirl. I love Cassandra Cain. And reading this story, I was like, she is so cool. Like, she's like, I remember like before she even puts on the costume, I was like, this is a cool character. And then the David Cain aspect, I was like, oh wow, this is just great storytelling. And then she becomes Batgirl. She has the sickest costume. Like, she's such a cool character. I wish they would do more with her in general in a lot of other fashions. It's one of the reasons why, like, when the Birds of Prey movie came out, one of the reasons why I was not why I did not look upon it as so favorably was because of what they did to my favorite Batgirl. And it's just like, this is what you do with this character. It's like, have you not? Anyway, that's just discussion for a different day. But yeah, no, she's just so cool, and I love Cassandra Cain. Anything with Cassandra Cain in it, sign me up. I think she's great. Yeah, Harley Quinn, her first thing. That's probably one of the cool, interesting factoids the story is remembered for, is that this is her introduction to mainstream comics. And I mean, like, what a way to introduce her, right? Like, again, this is a character who we know, right? But it still comes as a surprise in reading it. It's like, oh, this is where she enters the chat. That's so cool. As far as its legacy is concerned, I think honestly the biggest legacy here is like for Batman. This kind of cements the idea and the notion for him, at least moving forward in the short term, at least before they have to reset stuff as they normally do, that the family is a necessity, number one, and it also forces him to be more of a person to Jim moving forward. And then also just like in the aftermath of things like Gotham, like they have to work on saving Gotham and protecting Gotham in a different way. They had to kind of learn to redo it, but the fact that he has to relearn and do it together with his family is an important aspect of it. And so that's, I think, the lasting legacy for this.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I was thinking about this question because it's kind of hard for me to answer because it was so impactful. No Man's Land was so impactful for me personally as a fan, as a reader, that it looms large when I think about Batman. But yeah, as far as its wider legacy, I agree. Going back to what you said at the top, I don't know how often it's talked about, although whenever I do see it pop up on social media, it tends to be in favorable terms.
Yes.
It's also largely remained in print. There was an initial batch of trade paperbacks that were fairly incomplete, I believe, but then they did a 4-volume set that was thorough, and now it's also available in omnibus form and is totally available through that collection via the DC app. So it's definitely something that DC has continued to make available, which they don't always do. So there's something to be said for that. I agree with you in terms of those character dynamics and themes that were either established or refined or fleshed out here that you would continue to see play out, even if people don't always necessarily recognize where it's coming from. But I think you feel the aftershocks.
Yes.
But the other thing too, for me, it's like one of my all-time favorite comic book series, Batman or otherwise, is Gotham Central. And
yes,
the whole era, the new Gotham era that follows No Man's Land, where you have Greg Rucka on Detective Comics and Devin Grayson on Gotham Knights, and after a little while, Ed Brubaker on Batman, and then ultimately Brubaker's Catwoman run, and the aforementioned Gotham Central series. It's like all of that you can trace back to here. So I really feel like this has a lasting effect. I don't always know that it's known, right? Even something like Harley Quinn, it's like, yeah, she's had a huge presence in the comics for these past decades. Do people necessarily think like, oh yeah, No Man's Land was the one that brought her in? No, but it was. So yeah, I think it's had long lasting reverberations, even if it's not always like recognized for it.
Yeah. It's one of those, it's like real ones know. Real ones know.
Real ones know. If you know Ball, you know No Man's
That's correct.
Land. Jan says, this is another fun one. What territory of Gotham would you want to live in if you had to in the No Man's Land? Let's take Blue Boys off the table to make it more fun. I'm going to the park. I'm going to Robinson Park. I'm going
to go with Ivy because Ivy has fresh fruit and vegetables and nobody's messing with her.
Yes. As long as it's either before Clayface or after Clayface, not during the Clay, but otherwise, yes. I think I'm going to the park.
Yeah.
Because you think about just being in this city with no electricity, no running water, rubble everywhere.
Yeah.
People stink. You don't have fresh produce like you're saying. So to be in a more natural setting surrounded by trees and plants and grass, like I think that's
and
the
with
place.
Somebody who can make it so that way it's permissible to live in, and it's clean. There's fresh produce, fresh water around. Like this is that's where I would go.
Yeah. Okay. Jared says, which character do you think gains the most character growth? I feel like Huntress gets a really big spotlight between her initial round as Batgirl, as well as what she does to stop Joker at the end. I also think Poison Ivy's turn as the protector of Robinson Park was an inspired choice. And I think this is the story that really cemented the Penguin as a more mobster / legitimate businessman style villain that carries in the comics and even recent movies and shows like the Batman and the Penguin.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as far as who gets the most growth, I mean, we do spend a lot of time with Huntress, who is initially operating this is crazy to me. She's operating as both Batgirl and Huntress.
Yeah.
In the early parts of the story.
I mean, she's not doing her day job at this particular point in time.
That's
which,
true.
By the way, she's a teacher. So shout out the Huntress.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. She sticks around, and Batman does allow her to operate. And we find out in that Ground Zero special that right from the moment he got back to Gotham, he clocked that it was Helena as this new Batgirl, and observed her, tested her essentially to make sure she was following his ways more or less. But yeah, so she's also an early ally in this. Even when he's at the point in the story where he thinks he's doing it alone, he still has her. But yes, we definitely have this break when she's not able to defend the territory from Two-Face's attack. Mm-hmm. And it's sad to watch the path she goes down, because she reverts to her Huntress persona.
Yes.
Cassandra Cain will then take over as Batgirl, and then Huntress throws in with the strong men. Yeah,
with Pettit.
Yeah. I think initially probably aligned enough, but then clearly realizes how far gone this guy is. And then I think she gets to a point where she's there more to watch him and to be there for when things go bad.
Correct. Yeah. I think she gets to that point pretty quickly. And her noble sacrifice, almost sacrifice at the end, right? And I think she kind of understands and learns why Batman put her through the ringer that he did, and she kind of learns, moving forward, that this is what it really takes to be a hero and a protector, right? Because again, her motives for being the Huntress are not like everybody else's, and so she didn't necessarily have that type of dog in her at this, at that particular point in time, right? But she kind of understands what it truly means in that moment, to be one of the Mask and to operate in the city. And when again, Batman sees that when he sees her, when he's like, good work. Rest now, good work. That's like he meant it. Like he wasn't, blowing smoke. And that was basically the olive branch, and that was the welcoming into the family. Albeit you're not part of the inner circle, but you're in enough.
Right. Yeah, I mean, when we get to that final Endgame story and Joker and Harley show up where the Strong Boys are having their mandatory Christmas feast.
Yep.
And Joker has this whole plan to murder Hope by taking all of the infants who were born during the No Man's Land and is trying to get in to their dining hall. And at this point, Pettit has shot Foley in the head, shot dead.
Yep.
So he's gone. Pettit himself goes down, and then it's Huntress, and she holds the line and she protects the people inside, and she takes 3 bullets and is about to take a 4th to the head before Batman and Nightwing show up. And I've read this story now 4 times, and I know that Huntress continues. And yet every time I get to that chapter 2 of Endgame, I'm like, oh my God, is she going to die? Like, it's so, she gets shot over and over.
It's riveting.
Yeah. But I think there maybe is an argument for Huntress as far as the biggest arc that somebody goes on. And we really do spend a lot of time invested with her in her journey. And yeah, I mean, on this Batgirl note, the idea of her as this new Batgirl, I think intriguing. I do love the moment where she's supposed to stop Black Mask, who's attacking the clock tower, but she's supposed to stay out of sight. And she does. That's another order she disobeys. And Barbara Oracle sees her, the new Batgirl, and is very upset that Batman would endorse a new Batgirl.
Yes.
Which I thought that was a compelling moment. And then we get the introduction of Cassandra Cain. We'll probably have more to say about her in the podcast moving forward. But yeah, the daughter of David Cain, this assassin who was just raised in the ways of violence and doesn't even speak.
Nope.
And proves herself as one of Oracle's scouts, right? Because she has this whole network of agents throughout the city. And yeah, we'll come to don the mantle of Batgirl when we have our assembly of the Bat family coming together.
Yep.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, Kelly Puckett and Damian Scott, they did that Mark of Cain two-parter that introduced her. And of course they would go on to do the Batgirl solo series. So yet another instance of sort of a seed planted here that will bear fruit in the years ahead as far as the Batman comics. I want to circle back to Gordon and the Batman-Gordon relationship, because we talked about kind of where they are at the outset of this, of Batman's been gone and Gordon bears a lot of ill will towards Batman, to the point that he will entertain this alliance with Two-Face.
Right? He also punches him.
He punches him. Yeah. Yeah.
Gordon punches Batman. Now, granted, like, you know, when he tells Alfred about it, Alfred's like, "You let him hit you?" And he was like, "I let him hit me."
They needed it. Yeah. Yeah. But we get to, so right before Legends 125 is that jurisprudence storyline where, like we said, Gordon is taken, but you also have Two-Face's goons at the Gordon residence. And the Bat family is there to protect Sarah. And that kind of opens the door to
communication,
to a discussion. Yeah. Legends of the Dark Knight 125, you guys might remember the cover. We see the Batman's head as he's taking off the cowl. So it's Bruce's face with the cowl coming off. And not only is it my favorite single issue of No Man's Land, but if I were putting together a list of my top 5 single issues of Batman comics, it would be on there. I cannot stress how much I love this issue.
It is. So this is a top 5 Batman moment for me, period. Like across all media. And, you know, I've ruffled feathers saying that, like, none of Batman's greatest moments have ever happened on screen, by the way, like with live action, none of them have. And so, and this, like, again, like I imagine in my own dream world, if I were in charge of things, if I were James Gunn, right, in his position, like No Man's Land would be something that would be done. If you can imagine the scene of Batman and Gordon having this conversation, like, in live action, it would get, you know, it would get the acclaim that it deserves, I think, because this is you know, what people like when they watch things like, you know, the things that are considered cinema, these people talking very intensely in a dramatic fashion. This has everything of all that, especially, like, you know, they start off cordial, and then Gordon's like, "Are we friends?" And then that just kind of opens the floodgates for things. And he feels this, like, "You've been using me for 10 years. Batman issues right back is like, "As have you." And so they have this real man-to-man conversation, and Gordon essentially is like, "I don't know if I can trust you. You weren't like," and Batman's like, "The only thing that I can do to show you that, like, that you can trust me is by giving you my identity. This is the only thing I can actually give you." And Gordon denies it, and tells him to put it back on. And that's kind of what really kind of the fact that Batman was willing to do that is kind of what ends up mending the fences between them. And I think, in my personal headcanon, Gordon already knows. But same thing with, like, Perry White. I was like, he knows, right? Like, he knows. And so, but he doesn't care. And so I think the fact that he's like, "Put it back on," and he even tells me, "If I wanted to find out, like, I would have done it years ago." He's like, "Hell, I probably already know. You probably don't even know that I know." And I think that was his way of saying, like, "I know." But I think, but again, the reason why that is what mends the fence is because A, he knows, but also B, he understands the actual lengths Batman's willing to go to actually prove that this is actually a meaningful relationship to him. And then they go about his business as usual. They're back together again. It's a great scene.
I echo all of that. And I'm so grateful that they devoted an entire issue to this, because there are pages where it's just silent as they're standing there.
They're just staring at each other or staring off into space. Like, Batman's like, he's like, "The garden looks nice." It's like, bro, like, they're so awkward because, like, there's friction, and, like, you have Batman talking to Jim about the garden. It's like, what?
Yeah, it's like if you've gotten to the point where Batman is forced to resort to small talk about gardening, what's going on? But it's great, and it's one of those things where you just don't often or ever get to see a scene between them play out for such
No.
an extended period, and to finally have it out the way that they do. I mean, you laid it out, and it's so true as far as, yeah, like, are we friends? Like, it doesn't really seem that way. And Gordon brings up the fact that he's like, when you disappeared and there was that whole parade of pretenders, did you think I wasn't going to know it wasn't you? So valid from both perspectives. Like you said, when Batman throws it back at him of like, I've been using you, you've been using me, validity to that.
Yeah, he's like, what am I to you then? And Batman's like, you're my partner, and that's what really kind of sets Jim off. Which again, fair. And he also mentions like people friends and partners surely don't leave when you're in the middle of a sentence. And then at the end of this conversation, Batman stops, turns, and says, "Have a good night, Jim," and waits for him to respond, and then he leaves.
Yeah, absolutely. And that moment, when Batman is more than prepared to reveal his identity, actually removes that cowl, and Jim turns and he's like, "No, put it back." There's a moment in Hush that I've cited many times over the years when Bruce Wayne, who's narrating, he visits the Daily Planet, which he owns at this point in time. And exactly to your point, he's thinking to himself, I've always thought like Perry White is way too good of a reporter to not know that Clark is Superman. But then I also think to myself the same thing about Jim Gordon and what a great detective he is. I've always had that in my head. And I think like yourself, my personal headcanon is that Perry White knows Clark is Superman. Jim Gordon knows Bruce Wayne is Batman. They're too capable not to, and they also need to be able to maintain some level of plausible deniability. Like Gordon, especially, to be able to, no, I don't want to, like, I know, but I don't have to officially know. That's my personal headcanon. And I love the way this plays and the ambiguity that's allowed. And you cited the exact line, like when he's like, if I wanted to know who you were, I could have discovered it 10 years ago. For all you know, maybe I did. And I've comfortably lived in the ambiguity of that because I love that idea. But what was important, like you're saying, is the fact that Bruce was willing to take that step. That was the last thing he had. Words have only gotten them so far. That action is what's going to carry the day here. And the fact that he's willing to, exactly. Yeah. It's about what you do. But that's the other show, but here too, it's what you do. So no, I mean, I love this so much. This is the one thing, like, I mean, I don't know, we might have people listening to this who have never read No Man's Land or have never read it in full. And certainly this issue, you'll get maximum impact if you've read it after all of the buildup. I mean, there's a great moment early on when they're still fractured and Batman says to Gordon, he's like, Two-Face is not an ally you can trust. And Gordon's like, apparently neither were you. Like there are these great moments where he punches him, like you said. But even if you did read this in a vacuum, I would urge you to, like, if you're like, I'm only going to read one issue of No Man's Land, read this one.
Read that one.
It's so good.
It's a standout.
And then staying on this Batman Gordon thread, like we're saying, in the end game storyline, we'll still hit the Lex piece a little bit harder. But as far as Joker, right? He's making his move. He's kidnapped these infants, and he's hidden them in police headquarters. And Jim's wife, Sarah Essen Gordon, she's gone back there to replace her radio, which has been broken. And so she finds Joker with all these infants. And Joker drops one of them. She drops her gun to catch the baby, and Joker shoots and kills her.
Yes. That panel, by the way, he's not even smiling at that one. That's an image, man. I remember reading that for the first time. I was like, oh, this is different. And
so Batman and the GCPD and Gordon, they all converge here outside the headquarters, and Jim, just distraught, right? Yeah. Points his gun at the Joker. And I love this moment because Batman does ultimately talk him down from killing the Joker. And he does it by appealing to this notion that, like, we've all been through so much. We've all gone too far. We need to bring our people back. And though he doesn't say this explicitly, but I think the idea is, like, this is a moment to kind of show who we are, what we're capable of, to kind of start to turn the tide. But he says to Jim, I won't stop you. And I love this. The whole idea of Batman not killing, and especially not killing the Joker. We talked about it a little bit last time. It's going to continue to come up. But a moment like this was perfect in my view. And I agree, especially in light of everything Jim and Batman have been through.
No, I agree. And also, like, for Jim, I think it was probably comforting to hear that somebody understood and actually saw him in that moment and could understand what was going on. He didn't get a lecture. He didn't get this is not what we do type of thing. It was like, look, I understand.
it's not totally a Superman thing because it's Superman Batman, but there's another moment that I always cite, and it's in Public Enemies when Superman and Batman break into the White House and Superman's grabbed Lex. And once again, Batman doesn't try to talk him out of it. In fact, Batman says to Superman, this is why I love this moment. He goes, we can make it look like an accident.
Yep.
I'm like, yeah, like he's got his back. And I love that.
That's what you do for your boys, man.
Yeah, we can make this look like an accident. So no, at that moment, and then what Gordon does do, he doesn't kill Joker, but he shoots him in the knee.
Yeah.
And Joker's like, I might never walk again. And he realizes,
and
just
he
like
starts laughing. It's like the Joker in this, and I have to admit, I laughed at that because to me, that's the Joker, right? Like he has to be whimsy, silly, but heinous at the same time. It's a really tricky type of thing. And I think too often now, especially post Ledger, people only want to be, like I look at how crazy and messed up I am, instead of actually kind of understanding what the Joker is. Like it's like he is a clown. So part of him is an inherent silliness, and you have to be kind of funny sometimes. And even when inappropriate, it's part of the thing. Because we've all laughed at inappropriate things before, and that's part of what makes that to me what makes that character work so well is because sometimes he is funny, right? Because he is. But at the same time, you also have to be completely terrified of this person, and I think that's why I give Mark Hamill a whole lot of credit because he captures that. Like it's I think that is pitch perfect. Jack Nicholson did this exact same thing, right? Like he was both funny, but also like I'm not messing with this person. Like you have to have both. It can't just be one or the other. Unfortunately, and I think too oftentimes people are only doing the one part of aspect of the character.
Oh, that's a great point. Yeah. No, I hear you on that. If I have one regret about it, and it's not specific to this story, but him being shot in the knee and potentially not walking. It's like I feel like the next time we see the Joker, and I don't remember offhand, like he's just fine. I was like, all right, but it's
a great orthopedic surgeon.
Yeah, I mean, it's impactful in this moment, and that's what matters the most. But it's like, of course, it had to come down. I mean, we still have the Lex piece, but it had to come down to the Joker. He has a relatively minimal presence throughout this. His fleeting appearances. There's that two-parter. Well, there's the one shot that introduces Harley, and then there's the Code, that two-parter where Joker for attention is going to run for office, so to speak, against Billy Pettit for president of No Man's Land. But yeah, it's one of those things. It's like, and I'm glad the way that this played out, where it's like you would feel incomplete without the Joker, but at the same time, I'm glad he didn't dominate the proceedings. It left space for the others.
He's used perfectly in this. Like he's not overbearing. He doesn't take over. It's just that like as the story's wrapping up, of course, like when you think that like you're about to reach the finish line, that's when he shows up. That like you have to use these characters and you have to use these pieces correctly. And the stuff that I really, really, like and that really like speaks to me is when they do those types of things. There's not an overuse or misuse of the characters. They use them, and then their functionality within the story, within the world, is what works. It makes perfect sense. In this case, that's what happens with the Joker.
Right on. And then there's the Lex Luthor of it all, which is another fascinating component to all of this. And look, like we said, we get our new Batgirl, Cassandra Cain. We get the in continuity introduction of Harley Quinn. And we also get the debut of Mercy. Like Mercy Graves first appears here as this mystery woman operating on behalf of this unknown outside interest, hiring Bane to come into the city to smuggle in all of this building equipment. We find that out later, and to blow up the Hall of Records, to destroy all of the property records. And it's not until right before the Shell Game two-parter that we actually see Lex Luthor emerge as this unlikely savior. He's violating the law by entering Gotham, but he's got the media and public opinion on his side because, like we're not seeing this really because we're so laser focused on what's going on in Gotham, and they don't really have access to the outside world. But apparently, yes, there's been a lot of discourse in the public sphere.
As there would be.
As there would be.
And, as you understand, this is part of a larger plan for Lex Luthor to become president of the United States. And so, because of course, him being the person that saves a major metropolitan area of the United States after its collapse and after the failure of the government, like, of course, he's going to use that as one of the things that he can help fix, and use that as a way to garner the support for his claim for the White House.
100%. And the Superman books of the time reflected this. Like, it's part of the conversation, because after, I always laugh at this because he's in Gotham facing off against Lucius Fox and Batman on New Year's Eve. And then he's also part of the Y2K storyline in the Superman books. But Batman does have a line. He's like, if you leave now, you can make it back to Metropolis by midnight. So I was like, all right. But the books right after, because in the Superman sphere, he retains control over the Brainiac 13 technology and makes a fortune, and hand in hand with what he did in Gotham, like that's what he's able to parlay into the presidency. But they reference his efforts in Gotham in the Superman books, so great cross pollination and planting the seed and all that. So it was great.
And once again, like a real estate mogul, with doing nefarious things to try to get himself into the White House. It's like you would think that this would be like far fetched, but it's not.
It's not. So there's the real world parallel, and also it's just so in keeping for Lex. Like in some way, shape, or form, we're always going to come back to real estate. Yeah, but the fact that he emerges with supplies, with jobs, with medical aid. And really, I think, is the final domino to get the decision makers to lift the no man's land. But of course, his nefarious plot is destroying these public records and then forging titles to all of the property in Gotham so that he'll own the city, essentially.
Yeah. However, Batman was wise and had Oracle make copies, digital copies of all those things and send them to the Library of Congress. And so that way that there are two, and Lucius could pick up on, what did he say? Incongruities in the book.
Yeah. Well, I think there were discs that he had Catwoman steal back, and that, I think that had so like he had copies of the actual records, and was able to feed them to Lucius, who confronts Lex. And then Lex is prepared to have mercy, just kill Lucius. And then, of course, Batman intervenes. But I mean, ultimately, I think it worked out just fine in terms of the role Lex would have in Metropolis post Y2K. And then really not that long after that, assuming the presidency. But there is a part of me that's like, oh man, it actually, I don't know. Do you think it would have worked if Lex's plan to quote unquote own Gotham had worked, or at least worked in part? Because I mean, he ends up just leaving. But there's a part of me that's like, oh, I wonder what this would have looked like if he continued to have at least some hand in Gotham.
It would have been interesting, but as time moves forward, like he does have some stakes in some of the things that are in Gotham moving forward, like because in future storylines, it's not just Bruce Wayne money that's helping rebuild Gotham, because Lex does rebuild part of it. So some of that is powered by LexCorp, and so he does have some stakes in the Gotham area, because some of the things some of his money was used in the rebuild effort, and there's some buildings that are owned by him there as well. So he didn't leave empty-handed.
True. Yeah, that's fair. And I think Batman and the city needed the win of kicking Lex out at the end of the story, especially after the death of Sarah. Like, I do feel like it was fitting that he he was sent packing back to Metropolis. Yeah. But I love that. And we would see this for these next few years in the Superman titles and the Batman books, a bit more cross-pollination, or at least that I had noticed previously. And I like that. And I think, you had Jeff Loeb and Greg Rucka, and I think there was a level of coordination between the two of them, and that played out nicely in the books. So yeah, I love that aspect of it. What have we not talked about that we must talk about with respect to No Man's Land? The last major thing on my list, we've already hit on the unmade animated series. I know you've been sharing your perspective on the novel, which I will read. I mean, obviously aspects of this were adapted in The Dark Knight Rises, when Bane cuts off the city, and in the 5th and final season of Gotham.
Yeah. And a little bit of season 3 of Arrow.
Oh, right. That's true. As far as how it played out, without getting too in the weeds with this, but as far as how it played out in The Dark Knight Rises and in Gotham, I mean, did you like the aspects that we saw on screen there?
Some of them, but again, not enough time. I don't think was really given to really flesh out what was going on, because it was just more in the background. It's like, okay, this is what happened, and then now. And at that point, we're just kind of counting down until Bruce gets back, because Bruce is not part of it. He's not trying to help anything. He's just gone, and nobody knows where he is. And then he comes back, and then a day or two later, he's like he's gone again. And so yeah, so it was just kind of it was more used so as a device rather than like an actual story beat, really. And they just kind of used the setting of it and just kind of the trappings of it, but they didn't really do anything with it.
I think
The Dark Knight Rises.
I think that hits the nail on the head for me as well, right? Like some of the trappings are there, like the fact that you have Scarecrow with his kangaroo court,
yeah,
right, and things like that. But yeah, I don't feel like we got the full No Man's Land effect. Well, here's my question: what vehicle would you most prefer? An animated movie, a series of animated films, a full-on animated series, something else in the live action space? Like, what do you think would be the best vehicle for this?
I think the best vehicle for this would be, this is an entire season of television to really do it right.
Yes.
This has to be an entire season's worth. Animated or live action, has to be an entire season's worth of story.
Yeah, I agree with that. I hope, and I like to think that we did the saga justice. Obviously, we didn't pour through every issue. This would have required multiple episodes, but I think we hit upon the most salient, important aspects of this in terms of those dynamics and relationships and key moments and themes. And I hope I've adequately conveyed to the audience like how much I love this and how valuable I think the story is. And,
I can tell.
Oh, good. I'm glad, because I mean, I think as far as, because we've read a lot of these kinds of events, and I feel like this occupies a very unique, singular place. Not necessarily better or worse, but it's very much its own thing, and I think it works amazingly well. Anything else we haven't said that you want to say before I ask you to plug your show?
Nah, man, I think we covered a whole lot. But yeah, no, I'm thankful to have done it. So this is a great book to revisit. I'm glad I did. So yeah, thank you.
Right on. No, I'm happy to have you here for this. So what would you like to share with folks about Always Hold On to Arrow?
We are working to get through season 7. And then luckily for us, there's lots of like actual Green Arrow stuff, coming around the bend and in other forms, especially in the comic book realm. So we'll tackle that when it gets time to tackle that, but hopefully soon.
Right on. Well, I will encourage everyone to check that out. I thank you very much. I thank you, audience. Make sure you come back next month for another new installment. And until then, remember, it's not who you are underneath, but what you do that defines you. This podcast is an affiliate of BCW Supplies. The next time you need to restock on comic book bags, boards, boxes, and more, be sure to use promo code FSP to save 10% on your order. That's FSP for Flat Squirrel Productions. It helps support the show too. Thank you. Support the show and receive exclusive content by becoming a member at patreon.com/Anthony Desiato. Rewards include our DCU spinoff podcast, advanced listens, sponsorship opportunities, and more. My sincere thanks to all patrons. Please rate and review the podcast via your platform of choice, subscribe so that you never miss an episode, and continue the conversation by joining us on social media. Links are in the show notes. Flat Squirrel Podcast is also home to Digging for Kryptonite, a Superman fan journey, a long-running weekly series mining Superman's vast mythology across time and media. Subscribe today. Lighting the Bat Signal is a Flat Squirrel production. Key art by Isaiah Simmons and theme music by Kill Me Kate.